He's a guy who grew up in Chicago. Maybe he watched that game last night on Monday Night Football. Pretty dreadful as it was. But he also a proud graduate of Kansas, former employee with us and colleague with us, now doing great things at Sirius XM's Big 12 Radio. He is Ari Temkin. Hello, Ari.
Good morning. What's going on?
Man, we are cranking. Longhorns are gearing up. The fans getting ready to head to Arlington and play for a Big 12 championship. It is hard to believe. You lived here in Austin and worked with us, Ari, and covered this program. It really is hard to believe the 27 years of this conference. This is only their fourth appearance in the Big 12 championship game. Based on its resources and what they have, not nearly enough, but pretty cool for Longhorn fans to get one more look at it on their way out.
Well, yeah, and I think the relevance this year of the schedule, is so impactful and important on this, quote unquote revenge tour for Texas. I mean, you think about the last decade plus of this football program and the way in which teams in this conference have, really victimized Texas. And I mean, you think about the loss to Kansas a couple of years ago at home and how much that's made Texas the brunt of jokes, and their record against TCU since TCU joined the conference, their record against Oklahoma State, Texas Tech fans. I mean, think about their schedule this year, E. They play Baylor, Houston, K-State, TCU, Iowa State, Texas Tech, Kansas. So pretty much the entire Southwest Conference, Big 12 foes they've had over the years. And the only one they didn't have is Oklahoma State, the team they're getting in the Big 12 championship. But they've beaten every one of them. Obviously, Oklahoma, the one that they didn't, but they're moving on to the SEC with them. They have handled business, Texas has, against the teams that have victimized them over the last decade plus. And Oklahoma State is probably the one that's victimized them the most over the last decade plus.
Yeah, you're right about that. And we're kind of the keeping receipts tour, right? Longhorns will own, since they are moving off to the SEC, the forever bragging rights on these teams, however it went for the last, the last 12, 13 years of Texas football has not been up to par. That's the hope that Steve Sarkisian and the staff have turned it on their way to the SEC and get one last trophy on your way out. Not enough, but still would at least, finish it strong. Ari, what about Oklahoma State? Puzzling team. Certainly at the beginning of the year, there was talk of what's going on with Mike Gundy. We know he's not a big fan of NIL. His roster got turned over. He's looking for a quarterback, and it felt like September he treated like a preseason, like he was rotating three quarterbacks. They were trying to figure out what their identity was. But they lost their first conference game to Iowa State, and then had a bye week, and they came out of that and were 2-2. And have gone 7-1, and they've got the one really inexplicable loss at Central Florida, but have won 7 other ball games with maybe one of Mike Gundy's best coaching jobs to get this thing into Arlington on Saturday.
Yeah, it's been a remarkable year for Oklahoma State, to say the least. I picked them as the Big 12 champion before the season started, and I did that because I wasn't sure about a lot of the coaches in this league. This is a league of parity. I expected that we were going to see that again, and I just kind of thought, let's go with the coach that we know. And I really liked what Oklahoma State had coming back. Now, with that being said, the first 3 games didn't inspire much confidence because of what you mentioned, which is that Mike Gundy really did treat that like a preseason where he was rotating 3 quarterbacks through, even though we heard all offseason about how good Alan Bowman looked. He also only gave 19 carries to Ali Gordon the first 3 games, and now he's a leading rusher in college football. So, look, Mike Gundy is a lot of things. I think certainly this year there was some luck involved in their success, but he's also the type of coach that's not afraid to change in season, and the adaptations that they've gone through over the course of the season, offensively, defensively, are nothing short of remarkable. Obviously they built their offense around the running game and Ali Gordon, who's been spectacular, but they're good up front. They're really good along their offensive line. They've got good schemes. Their fullback, handles blocking for them well too. So it's not just Gordon, it's about what they have up front. And that's why I think this game is going to be so intriguing. It is strength on strength.
It is strength on strength. And as you talk about the Oklahoma State, thorn in the side of Texas. It's really, the last 10 games, the Oklahoma State's won 7. The Longhorns are 3-7 in their last 10 matchups with the Cowboys. They're more than 2 touchdowns a favorite in this game. And that seems to me about right. I've said to our audience here that this game feels like the Big Ten championship game to me, Michigan-Iowa. That I want to say it's a formality, but if you show up, handle business, the only team that can beat Michigan Saturday would be Michigan. And I think the only team that can beat Texas on Saturday is Texas.
Yeah, no, look, I agree to agree to a certain degree. I think, Oklahoma State has a lot more firepower than Iowa on offense.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
But I
not
think
the defense that brings.
Right. No doubt about that. I would be shocked if Michigan lost. I would be less shocked if Oklahoma State won. Now, granted, what you said is 100% true. Texas is far and away better. And we said that going into the year. I mean, I remember when we talked about this coming into the season, like the question marks around Texas were more on Sark and some of the things we hadn't seen yet. And they've done that this year. They have finished games in a lot of different ways, and things that I certainly questioned coming into the season about Sark. He's done an unbelievable job to, instill this culture and to, nurture the culture. And now we're seeing the fruits of that labor. But yeah, Texas up front on both lines of scrimmage is really good. We knew that coming into the season. I think defensively, they've been even better than we expected. Offensive line's been really good. So many weapons. And then, we saw Arch Manning on Saturday. Not that I expect to see him this Saturday, but man, you can't help but wonder what next year's going to look like because he is an athletic freak.
Yeah, good arm. Showed the speed to get to the corner in that game in his work in the fourth quarter of the big win over Texas Tech. Ari Temkin is with us. Ari, you gave us the great stat. I did not realize that on Oklahoma State. Ollie Gordon, who may win the Doak Walker Award. He's kind of a fringe Heisman candidate right now after his 5-touchdown performance in the win over BYU Saturday. He only had 19 carries in their first 3 games. He has burst on the scene here. What's the story here? Is that a Fort Worth? He's a guy that wasn't the highest recruit, but man, give me your thumbnail and scouting report on Ollie Gordon and what makes him special.
Yeah, from Euless Trinity. Texas apparently got in on him late, and he was firm in his commitment to Oklahoma State. He's a tall running back, runs with great balance, about 6'1". And look, he's the idea here is, and Sark mentioned this yesterday. He gets stronger as the game goes on. I think it's more about how he maintains his level, and yet other teams, disappear. He had 5 touchdowns, as you mentioned, last week, but all 5 came in the second half and overtime. He had 3 touchdowns the week before that in their win over Houston, all in the second half. So when you look at the second half of games the last 2 weeks, he's had 8 touchdowns out of his 20 in the last 2 weeks. And 2 weeks ago against Houston, they went away from him in the first half. It was kind of bizarre. And they found themselves in a hole, but they were able to dig out in the second half by just handing him the football. He's been, again, nothing short of spectacular. He's the main catalyst and reason for why this team is here. And it's not just him; it's the offensive line, it's the way the running game's built. But yeah, he is a really talented running back, and he's just a sophomore.
Yeah, just a sophomore, and you said he gets stronger as the game goes on and wears teams down, and he certainly did that last week. And but that does play right into the strength of Texas, who's allowing 2.7 yards a carry. But this is probably the best back they've seen. They gave up 100 yards to Taj Brooks last week against Texas Tech, but they so overwhelmed the passing game while giving up this couple of chunk runs to Taj, kid out of Manor. But that will be the challenge. But it does seem to play to the Texas strength. Hey, Ari, big picture for the Longhorns. Obviously they're thinking get a win here and then see what happens on Sunday. What's your level of optimism the Longhorns could find their way into the college football Final Four?
Yeah, pretty crazy that's even a question, right? You'd think a one-loss Texas who beat Alabama in Bryant-Denny Stadium by 10 points. If they won a Big 12 championship, they'd be a shoo-in for the playoff. It's pretty wild. I think it all starts with Louisville beating Florida State. I think you got to have Florida State out of there because that's an undefeated Power 5 champion if they win that game. I'm not so sure about how what they would need to happen in the SEC title. I would think Georgia to win. That way you'd knock Alabama officially out, even though you'd think Alabama should have been knocked out based on Texas's win over them. And then Michigan's probably in. I don't think Ohio State has much of a shot. So when I look at kind of the other situations with 4 unbeatens right now in Power 5, I think it kind of starts there. It's all about Louisville knocking off Florida State, but it's sort of ironic, right? This is a program in Texas that has had this brand that's prided itself on its brand. We've talked all the time about the importance of brand when it comes to the BCS national championship or the college football playoff. And, it's almost as if Texas now is feeling like what it's like to be Baylor, Oklahoma State in its final year in the Big 12. If they are left out, it would be absurd considering it's a one-loss Power 5 champion that beat Alabama on the road by 10 points.
Agreed. Now, look, I mean, if there are 4 undefeateds, Ari, I mean, there's a chance of that, right? I mean, you could end up with,
Right.
You know, if Washington beats Oregon and Florida State handles business and Michigan and Georgia win, that would just be kind of an outlier in this Final Four thing that you have 4 undefeated conference champions, and you just happen to be the 1-1 loss conference champion from the other Power 5 conference, and that would just be bad luck. But you're right. If they become, if there are some other 1-loss teams, then it becomes a beauty contest. You got to think the Longhorns have a pretty good chance. I even think if Alabama beats Georgia, that would solidify Texas, because it would, that win for Texas all of a sudden becomes even better if Georgia can't, if they handle Georgia. But of course, Alabama almost lost to Auburn in the Iron Bowl last week, and probably should have. Hey, Ari, that's good stuff, my friend. We appreciate it. Jumping in, and hope you're well. Will you be in Arlington coming up on Saturday?
Yeah, I'm going to go to the game on Saturday. I'm excited. A good buddy of mine lives in Houston and went to Texas, and so I'm going to go with him and cheer for Oklahoma State, simply because I picked them to win the Big 12 when the season started. So why not? Why not finish?
Then you get to be I love it, and we get to be the prophet. And that's a great pick, by the way. I mean, and you weren't looking very smart in September when they were 2-2 and had lost to South Alabama. But here you are with the bragging rights. At chance to say, yeah, I told you it was going to be Mike Gundy and the mullet coming out of nowhere to win the Big 12 championship and prevent Texas from finishing it off. Thanks, Ari. Appreciate it, buddy.
Take care. Enjoy the game on Saturday. Be well.
All right, there's Ari Temkin. He is the host of Big 12 Radio, channel 375 on Sirius XM, covering the Big 12 Conference, doing all kinds of great work. Follow him on Twitter at Ari Sports, ARI Sports. On the X, if you're looking for Ari and all his great content, find it there, and we appreciate him jumping in.